right now, like as you listen to this, you are actually being manipulated.
Oh, completely manipulated.
Yeah, I mean, you probably think you're just, staring at your phone screen or maybe glancing at a billboard on your commute or just scrolling through a website, completely in control of your own attention.
Right.
But the reality is every single color, every line, and every millimeter of empty space you are looking at has been weaponized.
Weaponized is the perfect word for it, honestly.
It really is. It's all part of this highly calculated system designed to control exactly where your eye goes, what information you prioritize, and, most importantly, how you feel about it before you've even read a single word.
Yeah, it is the absolute definition of invisible architecture. I mean, the entire goal of effective visual communication is that you aren't supposed to see the strings being pulled.
You're just supposed to feel the effect.
Exactly. When you look at a well-designed poster or, say, a perfectly laid out app interface, you don't actively perceive the underlying grid or the color theory at play. You just experience the final emotion or you just absorb the message. The mechanics are entirely hidden from the conscious mind.
And that is exactly our mission for today's deep dive. We are getting access to the foundational blueprints of this visual manipulation.
It's going to be a fun one.
It is. We are looking at a highly detailed graphic style manual, and specifically we're unpacking Chapter 2, which is dedicated entirely to form, space, and color fundamentals.
Right, the real building blocks.
Yeah, we are going to figure out how designers take flat, empty nothingness and use it to silently organize the information you and I consume every single day.
Well, the manual we are referencing establishes a core definition right up front, which I think is crucial. It states that graphic design is the seamless combination of content, form, and ideas.
Content, form, and ideas.
Okay, right. And when those three elements are calibrated correctly, they create a visual language that literally bypasses our logical brain and speaks directly to our subconscious.
Yeah.
It's a language of pure visual mechanics.
I keep thinking about this like a magician's stage.
I like that analogy.
Because think about a blank page or a blank screen, right? Mathematically speaking, it is completely flat. It is strictly two-dimensional.
There's absolutely no physical depth to it.
Right. Yet a skilled designer uses visual variables to trick your brain into seeing distance, feeling physical weight, and recognizing three-dimensional structure where absolutely none exists. They are literally carving space out of nothing.
They are.
Yeah.
And in our current world of, unrelenting information overload, understanding how that carving is done is not just an academic exercise for art students.
No, definitely.
It is a vital survival skill. I mean, we are bombarded with more visual messaging in a single day than our ancestors saw in a lifetime.
That is wild to think about, but it's true.
So decoding how color and space are used helps us understand the mechanisms of persuasion. It fundamentally enhances our critical thinking.
Because you can see the matrix, basically.
Exactly. When you understand the illusion, when you learn to spot the trapdoors and the mirrors, you stop being a passive consumer of media. You start recognizing the intentional psychological choices someone made to direct your attention.
So let's pull back the curtain on the first major illusion they outline, which is manipulating form and space.
Right, getting into the geometry of it.
Yeah. The text explains that how an element appears within a composition is determined by its placement, its scale, its color, its balance, and its repetition.
Just manipulating those basic physical forms.
Exactly. And by manipulating them, designers make flat screens or flat pieces of paper seem like they have actual traversable depth. Like they can make an object feel miles away, or they can make it feel like it's advancing right into your personal space.
And color is the primary navigational tool for this. It literally alters spatial relationships in the brain.
Wait, really? The brain actually processes the space differently?
Oh, absolutely. By choosing specific hues and by altering their lightness or darkness, a designer literally causes the viewer's visual cortex to experience space differently. The eye is biologically programmed to find a focal point, and color is basically the neon sign pointing the way.
The manual gives this fascinating example from Shul Studio in Israel to illustrate this. They designed these projected two-dimensional screens.
I remember this part.
And it's literally just light hitting a flat wall. Nothing physical is there. But by using incredibly subtle color shifts, just delicate gradients of light, they draw the viewer into the image.
It stops feeling flat.
Yes, it stops feeling like a projection and starts feeling like a room you could actually walk into. It suggests these deeply complex spatial relationships just through the manipulation of color.
Well, that phenomenon is actually rooted in how human beings evolved to perceive the natural world.
Oh, okay. How so?
In nature, we rely on something called atmospheric perspective.
Atmospheric perspective.
Right. When you look at a mountain range in the distance, the mountains furthest away look lighter, they're less detailed, and they often shift toward a cooler, bluish hue.
Because you're looking through the sky, essentially.
Exactly. You're looking through miles of atmosphere and scattered light. Schull's studio is mimicking that exact biological cue.
That is so smart.
By creating a subtle color gradient, they are triggering the brain's ingrained understanding of atmosphere, forcing the viewer to perceive deep space on a completely flat wall.
That makes total sense, relying on nature. But then you have designers who deliberately break those natural rules just to trap your attention.
Oh, the impossible geometries.
Yes. I'm looking at this example from Payon Design Associates in Philadelphia. It's a poster for the Philadelphia Youth Orchestra, and it uses this bold geometric shape known as the Devil's Pitchfork.
Ah, classic.
Just looking at it makes my eyes cross. It feels like the shape is physically coming off the paper, but at the same time, it's logically impossible.
Yeah, the devil's pitchfork is what we call an impossible object. Your eye tracks the top of the shape and clearly sees 3 distinct cylindrical prongs.
Right, 3 prongs. Very obvious.
But as your eye moves down to the base, those 3 curved prongs somehow morph seamlessly into a flat, rectangular base with only 2 prongs.
It physically hurts to look at for too long. I mean, it literally gives me a headache.
And that's exactly the point, because it induces a state of cognitive dissonance in your visual cortex.
A glitch in the system.
Pretty much. Your brain is a prediction machine. It constantly tries to map 3-dimensional geometry onto 2-dimensional stimuli. So when it encounters the devil's pitchfork, the geometry provides conflicting data.
Right, it's telling 2 different stories.
The top half tells the brain one story about depth and form, and the bottom half tells a completely contradictory story. The brain physically cannot resolve the image into a coherent 3D object, so it gets stuck in a loop of reevaluating the image.
So you're just trapped staring at it.
Exactly. The designer intentionally uses that optical failure to force the viewer to linger on the poster. The illusion of depth is so intense precisely because it is unresolvable.
That is brilliantly evil. Now, Melchior Imbeden from Switzerland does something similar, but instead of breaking logic, he literally bends the space.
The funhouse mirror poster.
Yeah, the manual compares it to a funhouse mirror. He uses these undulating, wavy lines, but he anchors them with 2 entirely different vanishing points and repeating bands of color. It literally makes your eyes feel like the flat paper is warping and bulging out at you.
He is hijacking our depth perception by providing multiple conflicting horizons.
Because normally we only have one horizon, right?
Right. A single vanishing point tells the brain, you are standing here, and the world recedes in this specific direction. By introducing a second vanishing point and warping the lines between them, Imbeden forces the eye to constantly shift its grounding.
It's like visual vertigo.
It is, and the repeating colors act as a pulse, amplifying the feeling of the surface rolling or vibrating.
Okay, so we have atmospheric perspective mimicking nature and impossible geometry breaking our brains. But let's unpack another example, because this one relies on something completely different.
Which one is that?
The manual highlights an illustration by Ames Bros in Seattle. It's a drawing of a Mini Cooper driving down a road. And the source text claims the designer made the car seem vividly 3-dimensional by skillfully matching the exact tone of red in the composition with the specific cherry red commonly associated with Mini Coopers.
Ah, yes.
Now, I have to push back on this a little bit. Is the illusion of depth in that flat illustration really just about the geometry of the drawn lines? Or does our brain's memory of that specific iconic red car out in the real world do half the work for the designer?
Well, the answer is absolutely the latter, and it reveals a crucial layer of visual communication.
So I'm right, the memory does the work.
You are. This is where physical optics meets cognitive psychology. The drawn geometry, the perspective lines of the car and the road, that creates the basic framework.
The skeleton.
Right. But by tapping into a viewer's previously held associations, that highly specific branded cherry red, the designer triggers a cognitive shortcut.
So my memory of seeing a Mini Cooper on the street is basically projecting onto the paper.
Precisely. Your brain already knows from years of real-world experience that a Mini Cooper is a heavy, three-dimensional metallic object.
Right, it's a real thing in the world.
So when your visual cortex processes that exact color trigger in the context of a car shape, it skips the step of calculating depth from the 2D drawing.
It just bypasses the math entirely?
Exactly. It simply retrieves the 3D memory file of the real car. It projects its own real-world memories onto the flat page, essentially doing all the heavy lifting for the designer.
Wow.
Color, in this instance, isn't just a decorative layer applied after the fact to make it look pretty. It is a functional trigger. It accesses your memory to build the physical experience of the information.
Okay, that is mind-blowing. But if we've successfully tricked the brain into seeing three-dimensional depth on a flat screen, that creates a new logistical problem for the designer, right?
How so?
Well, you can't have depth without distance. You can't have a 3D illusion without establishing what is closest to the viewer and what is furthest away. Which brings us to the mechanics of foreground and background.
Right, the push and pull of the space.
Exactly. For any visual message to be intelligible, there must be a distinct separation between the elements in the front and the elements in the back.
Otherwise, it's just a mess.
Yeah. If you don't differentiate them, the viewer's eye flattens everything back into a 2D mush, and they can't read the content. The foundational rule presented in the manual is that the background must always complement and support the foreground, but it must never overwhelm it.
It's like the background is the stage, and the foreground elements, the text, the main image, they are the actors.
That's a great way to put it. And to make the actors stand out, the source states those foreground elements need to be lighter, brighter, or more intense.
And this requires a very, very careful calibration of tone. The manual explicitly warns against using background colors that are too intense or too bright.
Because it just hurts to look at.
Well, when a background color vibrates with too much energy, it becomes overpowering. It literally swallows the actual message.
You know, think about being at a networking event in a tiny, crowded restaurant.
Oh, I hate those.
Right. If the background music is playing at a reasonable volume, it sets the mood, it makes the room feel energetic, but you can still hear the person standing right in front of you.
The music is the background color.
Exactly. But if someone suddenly turns the background music up to a deafening roar, you can't hear the conversation you're actually trying to listen to. The foreground, the words being spoken, is completely lost in the noise.
That's a perfect analogy.
A bad, overly bright background color is exactly like that deafening music. It physically exhausts the viewer.
And when the background is screaming, the viewer experiences rapid visual fatigue.
They just give up.
They will simply look away rather than expend the cognitive energy required to separate the text from the noise.
So how do designers fix that?
Let's look at how Studio Karga in Iran masterfully avoided this. They designed a complex typographic piece where almost all of the background colors belong to a very similar muted value range.
So they basically turn the volume down.
Exactly. Because there are no sharp, jarring contrasts happening in the background itself, the complex typography layered back there basically acts like a cohesive, woven texture. It becomes a quiet, unified wall.
And against that quiet, unified wall, they place these incredibly bright red graphic elements.
And they pop.
They aggressively pop out. Because the background is so subdued, those red elements demand your attention without having to fight for it.
Uwe Loesch, from Germany, achieved a similar separation, but he did it by aggressively hacking human vision using color temperature.
Hacking human vision, I love that phrase.
It's really what he's doing. He created a real, physical feeling foreground space by putting a bright red shape right next to a darker shadow, and he set all of that against a cool blue-green background.
I want to dig into that hacking aspect because we see this everywhere, especially on our phones. Why does red always jump out at us, and why does blue always seem to sink back into the screen?
It goes all the way back to the physics of light in our evolutionary biology.
Okay, lay it on me.
Warm tones. So your reds, oranges, and yellows, they actually have longer wavelengths of light.
Right.
Because of how the human eye's lens refracts light, longer wavelengths actually focus slightly behind the retina.
Wait, behind the retina.
Yes. So to bring them into sharp focus, the lens of your eye has to physically adjust, making the red object appear to advance towards you.
That is wild.
Cool tones, blues, greens, purples, they have shorter wavelengths. They focus slightly in front of the retina, causing them to appear to recede into the distance.
So our eyes are actually physically working differently depending on the color we're looking at?
Physically flexing and adjusting, yes. And evolutionarily, warm colors are immediate close-up survival markers.
Like blood.
Blood, fire, poisonous insects or, ripe fruit ready to eat. These are things that require your immediate, short-range attention.
And cool colors.
Cool colors represent the vast, distant environment, the sky, the ocean, the distant horizon. By putting a bright, long wavelength red over a cool, short wavelength blue-green, Uiloish is forcing your eye to physically pull the red forward and push the blue back.
This is exactly why every notification bubble on your smartphone, like the little circles telling you how many unread emails or text messages you have, they are always bright red.
Always.
The app designers know that against a cool white or dark blue app background, that red circle will physically advance toward your eye. It manufactures a sense of urgency.
It's a manufactured emergency.
Alex Gerard in California used this exact same interplay, contrasting a cool blue-green background with warm hues for the typography, making a simple, flat composition feel incredibly dynamic and layered.
And Susana Moscow from Bolivia pushed this concept to its absolute limit.
Oh, her work in the manual is stunning.
She designed a composition where she created a distinct foreground, a middle ground, and a background entirely through the use of color temperature.
No lines at all.
There were no overlapping lines, no drawn perspective, just flat shapes of color. She used a cool, expansive blue background to instantly establish deep space, which naturally pushed these silhouetted figures straight to the front of the visual plane.
It's almost like magic. So we've carved out our 3D space, right?
Yeah.
And we've successfully established a foreground and a background. We have built the stage.
The stage is set.
But a stage is totally useless without actors. The actual items you place within those spaces, the shapes, their scale, and how much they contrast with each other, that is what dictates the hierarchy of the message.
The order of operations.
Exactly. It is the invisible script that tells your eye, read this first, look at this second, and ignore this until the very end.
This relies on the fundamental building blocks of design: line, point, and shape. When you combine those geometric elements with color, you begin to reveal meaning.
Because the eye needs guidance.
Well, the human eye is inherently lazy. It is always drawn to what it perceives most easily and quickly. And in visual communication, that is almost always determined by contrast.
Okay, before we go deeper into contrast, I want to pause and just define some of these terms for anyone listening who isn't, a color theorist.
Sure, let's break it down.
Because the manual keeps talking about altering a color's hue, its value, and its intensity to create contrast. What is the practical difference between those three things?
Let's use a simple analogy of mixing paint.
Perfect.
Hue is simply the name of the color family. Red, blue, green, yellow. It is the color's basic identity.
Okay, so hue is just the base color, easy.
Yeah, right. Now, value refers to how light or dark that specific hue is. Imagine you have a bucket of pure red paint.
Got it.
If you stir in a cup of pure white paint, you are lightening the value, creating a pink. If you stir in a cup of black paint, you are darkening the value, creating a deep maroon. The hue is still red, but the value is changed.
That makes total sense. And intensity.
Intensity, which is sometimes called saturation, is how loud or pure the color is. Imagine that pure red paint again. It is highly intense. It screams red.
It's vibrant.
Right. Now imagine mixing a handful of gray dust into it. You aren't necessarily making it dramatically lighter or darker, but you are muddying it. You are reducing its purity.
Okay.
A neon red traffic cone has high intensity. A dusty, faded brick on an old building has low intensity. Designers create contrast by manipulating these three variables against each other.
Which brings up a really, really important question.
Makes sense.
If high contrast is the scientifically easiest way to grab human attention like stark black text on a pure white background, or a blinding neon green shape on pitch black, why don't designers just use maximum contrast for absolutely everything?
Oh, that would be terrible.
But why bother using subtle, muddy values or muted colors at all? If you want my attention, why not just scream?
Because of that concept of visual fatigue we discussed earlier with the screaming room, think about an alarm clock. If your alarm clock rings once, it successfully shatters the silence and gets your attention. You wake up.
Right.
But if that alarm clock rings constantly for an hour straight without pausing, it stops being a useful signal and becomes an agonizing irritant. You get a massive headache, you unplug it, and you throw it out the window.
The stimulus literally becomes a punishment.
Exactly. The human eye works the exact same way. Contrast is a brilliant tool to make someone pay attention to a specific focal point. But if you overdo it, if every single element on the page is pitched at maximum contrast, screaming at maximum volume, the viewer's brain becomes completely overloaded.
They don't know where to look.
They get confused about what is actually important because everything is violently fighting to be the most important. The manual makes a crucial point here. Effective contrast is always relative, not absolute. Little that goes a long way.
Right, if everything is bold, nothing is bold.
Exactly. A slightly brighter red, placed next to a muted low-intensity gray, will draw the eye far more effectively and far more pleasantly than a blinding neon yellow placed directly next to a blinding neon pink.
Because the eye needs a break.
The eye needs a place to rest in order to appreciate the loud element.
That makes total sense, and the manual shows how scale works in the exact same way. Scale conveys relative importance. You make something physically bigger to ensure it's noticed immediately, and you actively reduce the size of secondary information so it doesn't dominate the hierarchy.
It's all about proportion.
A fantastic execution of this is the Stylecraft identity package designed by the Australian studio there.
Oh, that's a brilliant case study.
They needed to build an entire branding system, letterheads, envelopes, packaging, digital assets, everything. Instead of designing 100 different things, they based the entire system purely on a set of repeating shapes and colors.
Keeping it simple.
But by drastically changing the scale of those shapes depending on the medium, like blowing them up huge on a poster or shrinking them down tiny on a business card, they allowed for a tremendous amount of visual variation while maintaining total brand consistency.
The viewer never gets bored, but they always recognize the brand.
Exactly. Now, Götz Gramlich from Germany, he is a master of combining scale and intense color. The manual shows a poster of his where he uses intensely bright, pure hues combined with massive compositional elements. The shapes literally seem to bulge off the page.
Very aggressive design.
But in another example, he uses these giant, heavy letter forms that take up the whole poster. However, because of the specific, slightly subdued colors he chose, the giant scale doesn't feel oppressive or overwhelming at all. It comes across as quirky, buoyant, and fun.
He is balancing the aggressive scale with a welcoming color palette. It's a very delicate dance.
On the other end of the emotional spectrum, you have Mark Rabinowitz from New York, who used absolute contrast to dictate mood.
The Dancer website.
Yes, he designed a website for dancers, and he contrasted highly detailed photographic images of the individual dancers against a stark, pitch-black background.
Just absolute darkness.
By removing all other visual noise, no secondary colors, no background textures, and utilizing absolute light and dark contrast, he isolated the human form and created a profound sense of theatrical drama.
It feels like they're on a lit stage. Now, Rudy Meyer from France used a different geometric element to build his space.
Oh, the quotation marks.
He designed a piece featuring giant quotation marks placed on a bright red background. He used the immense scale of the punctuation marks and the stark value contrast between black, gray, and red to literally carve out these dynamic, protective little spaces where the rest of the text could live.
It's like he built a house out of punctuation.
That's a great way to look at it. The quotation marks act as the walls.
But if shapes and scale build the rooms of our two-dimensional house, the source material highlights one specific element that acts as the hallways.
The paths between the rooms.
Yeah, right. It directs the traffic of the viewer's eye through those rooms, and that element is lines.
Lines, which are often referred to in graphic design terminology as rules, are the structural beams of a composition. They are the scaffolding.
They hold it all together.
They are used to add emphasis, they imply directional movement, they denote spatial depth, and they reveal the underlying grid structure.
Think about, reading a news website. The lines are what separate the header from the article and the article from the sidebar. They give the page rigid structure, so you aren't just looking at a floating, chaotic soup of text.
Without lines, the web would be unreadable.
In motion graphics, lines are often the actual elements moving across the screen to create a coherent sequence. But here's where it gets incredibly fascinating to me.
What part?
The manual has the specific section titled The Skinny on Lines, and it delves into the deep psychological impact of the lines themselves. It argues that zigzag lines inherently denote agitation, instability, and movement.
Right.
Meanwhile, straight horizontal lines are perceived as calming, soothing, and relaxing.
It is a primal biological response to geometry. We don't just see a line, we actually interpret its geometry as an emotional state.
It is exactly like looking at a heart rate monitor in a hospital or, a wildly fluctuating stock market graph.
Both very stressful things to look at.
Exactly. Our brains are hardwired by millions of years of evolution to feel a spike of adrenaline and anxiety when we see sharp, unpredictable, jagged spikes. A jagged edge in nature means danger. A broken rock, a predator's teeth, lightning.
It's a threat.
But when we see a flat, uninterrupted horizontal line, we feel a profound sense of peace and stability because it mimics the calm surface of water or a distant, safe horizon.
And designers literally weaponize that instinct.
They really do.
They will draw a jagged, angled line across a layout simply to make your brain feel a tiny fraction of a percent of anxiety, just to guarantee that you pay attention to what's inside it.
That's just wild.
And when we connect this to the broader picture of user experience design, lines act as a subconscious handrail.
A handrail.
Yeah. When you are reading a highly complex corporate brochure or navigating a dense, data-heavy dashboard, it is the invisible grid lines, or the subtly visible dividers, that are holding your attention steady.
Keeping you on track.
They sustain your visual endurance just long enough for the complex information to be absorbed without you feeling overwhelmed and abandoning the page.
The design studio 2FRESH, which operates out of Istanbul, London, and Paris, provided 2 brilliant examples of this in the text.
I love their work.
In one advertisement they designed for a duty-free shop, they used a very limited, calm color palette and strong, rigid straight lines to provide solid grounding points across the layout. Those straight lines make the full-color photographs in the ad feel stable, premium, and reliable.
Very soothing.
But in a second example they designed, they completely flipped the script. They used bright, high-intensity colors and built their typography entirely out of sharp, angled lines.
Lots of zigzags.
Tons. The result is a design that practically screams kinetic energy and movement, even if you just catch it in your peripheral vision for half a second.
Returning to Rudy Meyer in France, the manual highlights his skillful arrangement of intersecting lines.
Yeah, he's great with structure.
He uses them to instantly construct the illusion of depth within a 2D space, while simultaneously providing these incredibly handy, structured compartments for the supporting typography.
The shelves for the text?
The lines quite literally build the shelves where the text sits, ensuring the information is delivered in a digestible, organized manner.
But here's the ultimate limitation of just using lines, shapes, and colors.
Which is?
Well, a bright red square combined with a jagged line will absolutely get my attention. It will make my eye track across the page. But a red square doesn't make me feel nostalgia.
Right.
A geometric line doesn't make me feel grief or joy or hunger. To trigger complex human emotion, designers have to inject something real into that calculated geometric framework.
They need a subject.
They need imagery. Which brings us to section 5 of the manual. A picture and 1,000 words.
Pure geometry provides the structure, but photography and illustration provide the narrative anchor. Exactly. However, the manual points out a critical rule. In graphic design, an image is rarely, if ever, used entirely alone. It is the careful combination of a photograph or an illustration paired with a specific color palette that evokes a targeted emotional response.
Color can take the place of a background to isolate a subject. It can add intense emphasis to a specific part of a photo, or the color can recede entirely to let the text stand out.
It's all about context.
The manual states that the foundational choice a designer has to make when working with imagery is whether to use black and white photos, one-color monotone illustrations, or full-color imagery. And it asserts that the answer is always dictated by the specific needs of the project.
Always.
Now, I want to stop and challenge that premise, actually.
Oh, really? Okay.
Because it feels slightly contradictory to everything we've discussed so far.
Oh, you mean?
We have spent the last half hour establishing that color is the most deeply powerful, psychologically manipulative tool a designer has. It hacks our vision. It controls our emotions. So why do the sources praise black and white photos or monotone illustrations so highly? Why would a designer ever willingly take their most powerful psychological weapon out of the toolbox?
That is the brilliant paradox of design control. Removing color from an image doesn't remove the emotion. It simply transfers the control of that emotion away from the photograph and back into the hands of the designer.
Wait, explain how that works.
Sorry, if you place a vibrant, full-color photograph into a layout, the inherent colors inside that photo, the blue sky, the green grass, the red shirt someone is wearing, those colors will dictate the overall mood and color palette of the entire piece.
The photo is essentially doing the driving.
The photo becomes the boss.
Right.
But if you strip the color out of that photograph and make it black and white, the image becomes tonally neutral.
Right, it's just light and shadow.
It still provides the narrative information. You can still see what is happening, who's in the photo. But now, the designer can use the surrounding compositional colors, like the background or the typography, to dictate the emotional tone. It prevents the photograph from hijacking the design's intended hierarchy.
So the designer neuters the photo so they can command the context.
Exactly.
The manual shows an incredible example of this, featuring an illustration of an owl by Carrie Dodge in New York. It is the exact same line drawing of an owl used twice.
Just a simple sketch.
But by changing the value of the surrounding color scheme, the viewer's perception of the animal is radically altered.
It's a night and day difference.
Literally. In one version, the designer uses dark, muddy, high-contrast colors around the owl. The shadows are deep, and suddenly the exact same drawing of an owl looks genuinely sinister, like a predator hunting in the night.
Very menacing.
But in the second version, using a lighter pastel value scheme with low contrast, that exact same drawing of an owl just looks wide-eyed, curious, and cute.
Hatch Design in San Francisco executed a similar experiment with a poster series featuring a woodcut-style illustration of a bull.
I love this example.
In the first iteration, the muted, balanced color choices make the bull seem completely neutral, like a passive farm animal, just standing there.
Very cool.
In the second iteration, they flood the background with a color so intense and vibrant that it physically overpowers the fine lines of the bull, making the animal hard to even recognize. The environment swallows the subject.
A background wins the fight.
Exactly. But in the third iteration, they employ a stark, aggressive contrast of bright yellow and deep red. Suddenly, that same static illustration of a bull looks volatile, combative, and mean.
Ready to charge.
The physical illustration didn't change a single millimeter. The contextual color changed everything.
Context is absolutely king. David Criado from Bolivia used this power of context to create profound visual dissonance.
Oh, this poster is fascinating.
He designed a poster using only 2 colors, and the style and the specific hues perfectly reference bright, cheerful, innocent children's toys and clothing. It looks like a happy accident.
Very playful.
But he uses that innocent, disarming visual language to deliver a perfectly clear, absolutely hard-hitting, and deadly serious social message.
It hits you like a truck.
The brain registers the happy colors, lowers its defenses, and is instantly hit with a heavy reality. The visual dissonance does all the work before you even read the supporting text.
Color can also be used to imply motion and auditory experience within completely static imagery.
Oh, like the jazz poster.
Yes, Finn Nygaard from Denmark layered photographic imagery with vibrant color overlays, but he slightly offset them, misregistering the layers.
So they don't line up perfectly.
Right. The resulting visual vibration, the way the colors seem to ghost and shift against each other, suggests the kinetic, improvisational, slightly chaotic energy of jazz music.
You can almost hear it.
The viewer feels the rhythm of the music before they even read the word jazz on the poster.
The manual also provides a highly practical, everyday trick for achieving this kind of image harmony, the eyedropper tool.
Every designer's best friend.
Right. Jose Manuel Morelos from Mexico designed a poster featuring an incredibly vibrant, dominant photograph of a subject bathed in blue and orange light. To add his typography and make the text stand out without clashing with that intense photo, he used the digital eyedropper tool to sample a lighter subordinate value of that exact orange directly from the pixels of the photograph.
Lifting the color right out of the image.
He then applied that sampled orange to his typography.
It's a technique that creates inescapable subconscious harmony.
Because they literally match.
By pulling a color directly from the image and applying it to the graphic elements, the designer unifies the entire layout. The photograph remains the prominent focal point, but the typography doesn't feel like it was slapped on top as an afterthought.
It feels intentional.
The whole composition feels organically integrated because the text and the image share the exact same genetic color DNA.
So we have taken a massive journey here. We have drawn the viewer in by carving 3D space out of nothing. We have directed their eyes using shapes and psychological lines. We have set the precise emotional stage using imagery and contextual color.
We've done a lot of heavy lifting.
But eventually the magic tricks have to end, and you have to deliver the actual literal message. You have to give the viewer the information they came for. Which brings us to the final element. Typography and color.
The voice of the page.
Typography is what actually reveals the specific literal message, but it is the color, the scale, and the precise placement of that typography that tells the viewer's brain how to read it, what tone of voice to imagine, and how important the words are.
The manual draws a massive, uncompromising distinction between how a designer should apply color to display text, which refers to your giant headers, titles, and billboards, versus how they must treat body text, which refers to the dense, long-form paragraphs you actually have to sit down and read.
And this is where designers have to be incredibly disciplined, because with body text, readability is the only thing that matters.
Absolutely. The eye is a muscle, and reading requires a tremendous amount of micro movements and focus. If the contrast between the background color and the body text color isn't perfectly calibrated, reading becomes a physical struggle.
It's exhausting.
The manual explicitly states that, neurologically speaking, dark text on pure white backgrounds remains the absolute best configuration for dense body text.
The classic for a reason.
Furthermore, when dealing with text-heavy design, especially in a globalized world, designers must be hyper-aware of avoiding colors that carry heavy cultural associations that might subconsciously distract from the meaning of the words.
Imagine trying to read a full 300-page fantasy novel where the entire book is printed in neon green text on a bright red background.
Oh, it would be physically impossible.
Your eyes would literally start watering after 2 paragraphs. You would get a migraine. Viewers do not have the time, the patience, or the physical stamina to struggle with your design. If an app developer or a web designer makes me squint to read their paragraphs, they have lost me.
They click away instantly.
I'm closing the tab. The design has failed its primary function.
Display text, however, is liberated from those constraints.
The big letters get all the fun.
Because headers and titles are huge, they act as a visual exclamation point. They can have wild tones, intense textures, and aggressive, vibrating contrast, because you only need the viewer to look at them for a fraction of a second to absorb the handful of words.
The design firm projects in New York demonstrated this balance perfectly. For a text-heavy layout, they used a stark white background and crisp black body text, ensuring perfect, effortless readability for the deep information.
Keeping the body text safe.
But they used just a tiny, precise amount of bold, vibrant color exclusively on the massive headlines. That tiny splash of color against the black and white creates an enormous shift in the visual hierarchy.
It grabbed you.
Your eye goes straight to the headline and then comfortably moves down to read the black text without sacrificing an ounce of clarity.
Sebastian Guarini from Argentina used color in typography, not just for hierarchy, but for data comprehension.
Making spreadsheets beautiful.
He was tasked with laying out incredibly dense, complex data across multiple columns. If it were all black text, it would look like an impenetrable wall of numbers.
Nobody wants to read that.
Instead, he applied a unified, carefully selected color palette to differentiate the columns. By subtly color-coding the data streams, he made it exponentially easier for the viewer's eye to track horizontally across the page and compare the information without losing their place.
So the color is doing the organizing.
The typography's color becomes a cognitive filing system for the brain.
Hatch Design used a similar structural trick, but they placed blocks of subtle color behind the body text itself to break up the vast white space, essentially creating multiple distinct reading areas on a single flat page.
It creates zones.
It tells the reader, here's a new thought. And then you have Guts Gramlich, our master of bright colors from earlier, who playfully arranged large, heavy letter forms to create secondary shapes in the negative space between the letters.
Playing with the empty space.
He colored the text turquoise and red, which are near complements on the color wheel. Because they sit opposite each other, they visually vibrate against one another, emphasizing both the typography itself and the architectural shapes created by the empty space between them.
All of these varied techniques eventually boil down to one golden rule presented in the text. Color should only be applied to text when it fundamentally supports clarity.
Support clarity, got it.
It should never, ever be a decorative afterthought. Negative space, the empty areas around and inside the text in contrast, must work together to create spatial depth.
Oh.
When a designer adheres to these rules, mere letters cease to be flat ink on a page. They become structural architecture. They become form and space.
So what does this all mean for us as we navigate the world? Let's trace the journey we just took. We started with a completely flat, empty, meaningless two-dimensional space.
A blank canvas.
We used the biological principles of atmospheric perspective and the psychology of color to carve out three-dimensional depth. We set up a distinct, readable foreground and a supportive, quiet background.
We built the structure.
We built a rigid structural framework using scale, shapes, and the physiological impact of straight and jagged lines. We injected pure, associative human emotion into that structure by manipulating the context of imagery. And finally, we gave that invisible architecture a clear, highly readable voice with typography.
It is a meticulously calculated orchestration of human perception. And the true takeaway here is that mastering these fundamentals, whether you are the designer actively creating the work or just an everyday observer trying to navigate modern society, it turns you from a passive, oblivious consumer of media into an active decoder of visual language.
You level up.
You stop being the audience at the magic show, simply gasping at the tricks, and you start seeing the trapdoors, the hidden wires, and the mirrors.
You see the strings holding up the puppet. Which leaves me with a thought I really want you, the listener, to mull over today as you go about your life. We've seen exactly how deep and how biological these tools are. If a simple drawn zigzag line can make our heart rate spike and make us subconsciously feel anxious,
Just from a line?
and if a subtle shift in a background value can make an innocent illustration of an owl go from cute to sinister, how is the deeply calculated, highly tested color coding of our smartphones and social media apps secretly scripting our daily moods without us ever noticing? Next time you unlock your phone, pull down to refresh a feed, or see a bright red badge pop up on an app, don't just react to it. Stop and ask yourself, what is the specific color mathematically designed to make me feel right now?